The Panamera is often the overlooked model in Porsche's lineup. Not the fastest, best handling, or best selling, it appears to not fit into the German manufacturer's range. However, it has stood the test of time when competitors like the Aston Martin Rapide have been phased out, and is consistently rated higher than other similar cars like the Mercedes CLS and GT 4-door, and the Audi A7 and RS7. So how did the Panamera come about? What impact has it had on Porsche? And is it still relevant in a world of SUVs and increasingly electrified vehicles? The story of the Panamera actually begins in 1988 with the 989 concept. Based on the 928, it was designed to be a luxury Grand Tourer with performance better than other luxury saloons at the time. This was achieved with a V8 engine with power output of around 300 horsepower. Design-wise, it took inspiration from the 911, with elements being seen in the 993 and 996. The headlights were also reminiscent of the 959s, as Porsche used its exterior design to show it was no ordinary luxury car. Ulrich Bez, the man responsible for the 989, left Porsche in 1991, which spelled the writing on the wall for the four-door. Due to declining 928 sales, development of the 989 was scrapped in 1992, with Porsche hiding the prototype until it eventually went on display in their museum. Whilst it never actually went into production, it showed Porsche's appetite for making something more practical in the hopes of better sales. Porsche also teamed up with German rivals Mercedes in 1990 with the 500e, which featured a 5-litre V8 from the SL, which was Porsche's job to fit into the car. Porsche assembled the chassis before it was sent off to be painted. It then returned to Stuttgart to have its engine put back in, before it was shipped back to Mercedes. In 1994, production began of probably the most well-known Porsche four-door partnership. The Audi RS2 is a luxury estate, and the first Audi RS model. Porsche replaced the turbo with an even larger one, and replaced the other engine components. The assembly took place in the same factory as the 500e after it was discontinued. They also supplied the braking and suspension systems. These two collaborations show Porsche's willingness again to boost sales due to their slow sales of their two-door models. It also crucially gave them experience of producing cars at a higher volume, which will be important for the Boxster and Cayenne. If you're interested in the Cayenne and other projects that Porsche took on with mass market brands, I've made a video about Porsche's SUV story, so please check that out if you're interested. In the early 2000s, Porsche made concepts called the Mirage, Meteor and Phantom. They were all saloons with a coupe-esque shape and all had features that could be seen on the production Panamera. The Mirage was the concept that was deemed the best, and therefore is the closest to the finished product, but the Panamera took aspects from each concept. The Panamera will be first shown off at the 2009 Shanghai Motor Show, taking its name from the Carrera Panamericana race which took place in Mexico. Whilst it was somewhat unexpected due to the lack of publicity surrounding the concepts, the Panamera was less of a shock to petrol heads than the Cayenne. Initially criticised for its looks and being too luxury oriented, the Panamera was first launched in S, 4S and turbo variants. As with the Cayenne, the first models used a V8 and were the more performance focused, each using 4.8 litre V8 engines. The turbo, as the name suggests, also benefited from two turbochargers, taking power to nearly 500 horsepower. All Panameras had adaptive air suspension, Porsche's dynamic chassis control, and active anti-roll bars in Porsche's bid to balance handling and comfort. The Panamera also came with a choice between a ZF 7-speed gearbox and a 6-speed manual in some markets. Inside, the Panamera came with leather seats, a central screen, and a centre console that separated the driver and passenger. In 2010, two new models came. The base Panamera and Panamera 4 launched with a 3.6 litre V6 engine, producing 296 horsepower. They were obviously cheaper, but the V6 was derived from the V8 and used technologies from it, like Vario Cam Plus, and auto stop start for PDK versions. In 2011, the GTS was launched. A more driver-focused model, it also used a V8 engine with 424 horsepower. The Turbo S also launched this year, with upgraded turbos being one of the engine upgrades, alongside gearbox tuning for faster shifts. The result was 542 horsepower and a 0 to 60 time of 3.3 seconds. 2011 was a busy year for the Panamera, with two other models also being added to the range. They both used Cayenne powertrains and both promised better fuel economy. The S Hybrid used a 3-litre V6 and a 46 horsepower electric motor to make a combined 375 horsepower. It was the most environmentally friendly Porsche, producing 193 grams of CO2 per kilometre. The Panamera diesel used a 3-litre Audi V6 from the Cayenne and had 247 horsepower. It was the most efficient model in the Porsche range, with a fuel economy of 45 miles per gallon. In 2013, the Panamera range got a facelift with new front end and bumpers. It also brought a long wheelbase version, which was available on the 4S, Turbo and Turbo S in certain markets. The biggest change, though, was to the S. It now used a 3-litre V6 instead of a 4.8 V8. Additionally, the SE Hybrid was added to the range, using the same engine with a 95 horsepower electric motor. It was the first plug-in hybrid for the saloon, and it took the 0 to 62 down to 5.8 seconds, and the fuel economy up to 50 mpg combined. The Panamera was a success, with over 100,000 sold in the first 4 years, and improved sales after the facelift. In 2016, Porsche revealed the new second generation Panamera. It featured a new design in and out, with an altered shape to make it appear more coupe-like. There was a full-length LED light bar at the back, like the 911, with a sharper design all round. Inside, it featured a larger touchscreen, a new centre console with an emphasis on technology, with far fewer knobs and dials than the previous model. There was also Apple CarPlay now, as well as an improved voice control system. From launch, the 4S, 4S Diesel and Turbo were available. The 4S used a 3-litre twin-turbo V6, while the other two both used 4-litre V8s with their respective fuels. The Panamera and Panamera 4 followed, both using the V6 but with a reduced power output of 325 horsepower. The 4E Hybrid also returned with a 130 horsepower electric motor being used alongside the V6 seen on the 4. 2017 saw the introduction of two models that would shake up the Panamera range. They were both shown off at the 2017 Geneva Motor Show. The Sport Turismo was Porsche's first estate. The shooting brake version featured a similar design, with the obvious exception being that it was longer and taller to offer a more practical experience. The other new model was a Turbo SE Hybrid, a plug-in hybrid designed to extract the most performance possible from the 4-litre V8. Using the same electric motor as on the 4E Hybrid, it had a combined 671 horsepower, making it the third most powerful Porsche ever at the time. In 2017, the diesel models were removed from the configurator after it transpired that their engines were 1.5 times over legal limit for emissions. Then in 2018, Porsche announced that they would be removing diesels from their lineup entirely. In 2019, the Panamera GTS was reintroduced. Again, focusing on driver engagement, it used a 4-litre twin-turbo V8 with 454 horsepower. Despite being cheaper and less powerful than the turbo models, it was deemed the best driving of the Panamera lineup. In 2019, the Taycan launched. Not mechanically based on the Panamera, it clearly shares a similar concept, but instead of polluting engines, high-performance electric motors. Design-wise, it has a coupe-esque shape like the Panamera, with the rear LED lights like it. The headlights are similar to its combustion counterpart too. Inside, it is reminiscent of the Panamera, except with more technology, as almost any form of physical button has been replaced by a touchscreen. At launch, the Turbo and Turbo S were available, and since then a whole range with the same models as the Panamera has developed. They range in performance from 402 horsepower all the way up to the Turbo S with 751, completing 0 to 60 in 2.6 seconds. In terms of range, this varies by model between 230 and 270 miles on average. Since launch, Porsche have also added the Cross Turismo and Sport Turismo models. They're both shooting brake models, but the Cross Turismo is raised and has plastic features and enhanced protection underneath, as it is more of a crossover model and reportedly is intended for light off-road use. The Taycan has sold incredibly well, and sales were over 20,000 in the first year. Nearly 120,000 have been sold in total, with nearly 30,000 of those being produced last year. It sold more than any Panamera last year, and may make people question how relevant the combustion model is in this day and age. Speaking of the Panamera, it was facelifted in 2020 with slightly different designs at the front and rear, as well as new wheel options. All the usual models returned, with the Turbo SE Hybrid getting a boost of over 20 horsepower to take its total to 563. So what now for the Panamera? The new generation is going on sale this year, although really it's just another facelift. With new front and rear lights and a slightly more aggressive design, Porsche are trying to market it as a sports car rather than a luxury performance saloon. The interior is very similar to the Taycan, as it uses screens and digital driver's displays. Porsche are now taking orders for the base model, 4 and Turbo E hybrid. The Taycan is also receiving a facelift with new headlights being spotted on a development car, as there are rumours of a GT version coming to the range. So there we have it, the story of the Panamera. It's a car that has stood the test of time despite only being 15 years old. Still being on sale in a market that has changed so much is impressive, and its sales being comparable to the Taycan is encouraging considering the success that the car has had. So, whilst it remains to be seen how much longer it will live on, it is a testament to Porsche being able to keep such a car in production.